Hi, I'm Krista Weber, and this is a look at the challenges associated with integrating UX into the Agile framework. Agile was first introduced 20 years ago in the form of the Agile Manifesto, which was created by developers as an answer to the shortcomings of the waterfall framework, which was the most commonly used framework at the time. Agile was designed to adapt quickly to change, and unlike waterfall, the focus was on quick releases of small feature updates, which were created in short sprints that are usually 2 weeks in length. The focus is on the customer, and I'll talk more about this later. Unfortunately, UX and usability are not part of the original manifesto, as you can see just by looking at a screenshot of the website. So let's talk a little bit about the definition of a user. In Agile, the user is actually the customer, basically the person who's paying the bill. This is an important distinction because in most cases the customer isn't the end user. In UX, we're focused on the person that is actually going to be using the product. Usability wasn't part of the original manifesto because Agile focused on efficiency in coding. This means UX designers often have to fight for testing, and often Agile will try to skip testing because it slows down the coding process. Another feature of Agile is no design up front. The idea is that you're not supposed to waste time on the discovery process, but instead just jump straight into coding. UX is the exact opposite, wanting to do a lot of research and design prior to coding. Agile doesn't really have the timeline for big design up front, and because things often change in the development of products, they feel investing large amounts of time on something that is probably going to change is a waste of resources. The compromise is to have little design up front. This is usually done by having the upfront design scheduled one sprint ahead of the coders, which provides a shortened time frame but does allow for upfront design. Because Agile focuses on small teams that focus on small feature updates, often over a 2-week period, compartmentalization happens. Each feature release can look different and have different interactions. Teams are working independently of other teams with very little communication, and the lack of vision of the project as a whole causes inconsistencies in the interface. Scheduling is also a continual challenge, mainly because of the upfront design dilemma. The solution is Sprint Zero, performed by the designers, where they have enough time for little design up front. The timing is that they work one sprint ahead so they can present their deliverables before the coders start their sprint. Where do UX designers and researchers fit? There's much debate regarding whether they should be with coders on a small team or in a separate UX team, and there are pros and cons to each. When UX designers are on the same team with coders, there's better communication, and the UX designer's daily presence on the team is more likely to convey the value that UX brings to the product, which increases buy-in. The reason that this sometimes is not done is that it requires a UX designer and UX researcher for each team, which requires a lot of UX hires. Putting all the UX designers on a team together helps the UX to become more consistent because the designers are more aware of the design as a whole. However, communication between UX and programmers suffers, and the requirement of less UX designers often ends up creating an unrealistic workload for those UX designers. Agile focuses on efficiency, and one of the things that it cut back on was documentation. However, artifacts actually help increase collaboration between coders and designers because they help them share a common vision. A UX board in a prominent location can help keep coders on the same page. It also helps remind coders that UX is contributing to the product, especially if the UX designers are on a separate team. There have been many new frameworks over the past 20 years that are based on Agile and are attempting to incorporate user-centered design. The most successful so far has been Lean. Testing is built into every sprint, usually at the end of each week, and a hallmark of Lean is that the teams are small and co-located. Each team should have a UX designer and a UX researcher. The staffing requirements of having a designer and researcher for each team can be obstacles to the adoption of Lean, especially because many companies rely heavily on outsourcing. While Lean is a step in the right direction, many issues I've shared show that there's still room for improvement. Future research into developing a framework that gives UX and developers equality would include incorporation of UX into all phases, including how the teams are rated, coders getting more education on UX value, top-down UX buy-in. Testing needs to be often and with real users, not proxies. Team collaboration where UX and coders share common goals instead of competing ones, and multiple iterations built on feedback from user testing should be the norm. Thank you for your time.